Now, ever since The Acolyte was cancelled, I think we all knew it was just a matter of time before Amandla Stenberg, who plays Osha and May in the show, before she somehow or in some way responded to it. After all, she had put out a diss track to address the haters of the show after the first few episodes had dropped. Which, even though I think she has every right to say whatever the heck she wants, however she wants, we all do or should, but I'm not so sure that was the best way to go about it, to complain about the world and to be very antagonistic towards the fans who weren't enjoying or watching the show, and she even asked for a response from them. And I think the response was to simply continue to not watch it and to basically call her a bit of a entitled brat, given she has a wealthy father and no doubt grew up quite comfortably and hasn't known all too much actual hardship in her life. Anyway, just yesterday she put out another video, not a musical number this time, but a video that was about 10 minutes long and where she's just sitting there doing her hair and discussing what she thinks about The Acolyte being cancelled. Mainly again calling out all the haters as well as thanking those she worked with and the fans who have been very supportive and sent her fan art and all that sort of thing. And so, no, it wasn't all negative, and I did think she had a few good or interesting things or points to say or make, which we'll get to. But she basically started out by saying how she wasn't all too surprised that the show was cancelled because of a rampage of vitriol that it faced ever since it was even announced, when it was still in the concept phase and before anyone had ever seen any of it. She then said, "That's when we started experiencing a rampage of hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and hateful language towards us." And though I know or am pretty sure she's using the terms we and us as a sort of a solidarity thing, that she stands with her fellow cast and crew, I get that and I think that's fine. But no one was really attacking her personally when the show was first announced, or when she was first announced to be in it. There were two things that people were upset about initially. One was that literally one of the first things that was ever said about The Acolyte was that it was going to be female-centric. And that got a reaction from some because, well, that's kind of an odd thing to be the basis of your show, or like the first thing to say about your show before you say really anything else. I mean, Star Wars is supposed to be for everyone, right? And also because that was interpreted, again by some, to mean that they're going to put a bunch of strong female characters in it that are going to be great simply because they're women, which many feel was the problem with a character like Rey, and that was a big reason why the sequel trilogy wasn't so great. Basically, they saw that being, again, the first thing, or one of the first things said about it, as a sort of red flag. The other problem people had, the main one, the big one, was that they didn't like Leslie Headland or think she should be working on Star Wars. Not because she was a queer woman or anything like that, but because she had been the personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein, and they felt like she, at the very least, had to know something about what was going on and did nothing about it, or even potentially had a hand in helping him do what he was doing, which, I want to be clear, there is no evidence of either one. But even if she was indeed clueless, to many it still, agree or disagree, fair or not, it felt like a bad look to hire her to do a Star Wars project for Disney. Furthermore, before she got the job, Headland had said some things about George Lucas and how he basically got too much credit for Star Wars when it was more of a team effort than anything else, which, no, isn't entirely wrong. Lucas was not solely responsible for the success of Star Wars. But without him, there is no Star Wars, and so many felt when these comments resurfaced that she was disrespectful towards him, and well, being disrespectful towards Lucas doesn't always exactly endear you to Star Wars fans. And then, after she was announced to be the showrunner, she made many comments about how the show wasn't going to be kind to the Jedi. She talked about how the Order was flawed and how she was kind of eager to expose that, essentially, or expose it further in her mind. And so that was something else that some people, or fans, myself included, took issue with and made us a little leery about the show to come. Because, as I've pointed out many, many times before in videos, the point of the prequels was not to show that the Jedi Order was inherently a flawed institution. That was not the point George Lucas was trying to make. Instead, it was to show that any institution, or democracy itself, can be corrupted or fail and fall when people become even just a little complacent or a little too comfortable and stopped being vigilant. That was the problem with the Jedi. It wasn't that they were an order that had been inherently flawed for 1,000 generations, it was that they had let their guard down. And so those are the main reasons why, from the very start, the show was essentially attacked. There is no denying that from the very beginning that yes, people were against it, but those were the reasons why. It had nothing to do with bigotry or any sort of coordinated attack by a certain group of people or a certain side of the political spectrum. Which, no, doesn't excuse any or all of the hateful comments that are or were eventually sent Stenberg's way via social media, because she no doubt got some, and she did talk about it in this video and how it was basically worse than she could have ever imagined it would be. And I very much think it is wrong and disgusting to send her or anyone else anything that is truly hateful, nor did people need to necessarily gloat at her on social media about the show being canceled. That said, yes, people can be happy or even celebrate that The Acolyte was canceled and that Star Wars will move on from a show they didn't like or agree with, or they will spend their resources better elsewhere and give us a different show. Also, there has to be a careful distinction made between hate and genuine criticism. Because not everyone, in fact most, who said something bad about The Acolyte or her performance in it potentially, they were not trying to be hateful. They were simply critiquing a show set in a franchise that is very, very important to them, and that they are potentially or likely going to be very, very opinionated on. Which, no, doesn't excuse perhaps going a bit too far with legit criticism, but it is still criticism. It is not motivated by hate for her or anyone attached to the show, save, of course, people who don't like Leslie Headland for arguably their own justified reasons. Instead, some people just thought it was a bad show and were disappointed about that and said as much, as they are free to do. It is that plain and that simple. And it's not even all that unlike what happened with the prequels back in the day and how many people rejected them and how vocally they were about it. And that, of course, those films came out before social media was really a thing. So it's hard to know what kind of reaction they would have gotten if the level of social media that exists today, or engagement with it, had existed back then. Either way, two individuals that received plenty of negativity at the time, that I think we'll all agree went way, way too far, were Hayden Christensen and George Lucas himself. The literal creator of Star Wars got plenty of hate from Star Wars fans. And some of it was quite nasty, and yet I don't think anyone would make the claim that bigotry was at the root of any of it back in the day. And so the question then has to be asked, why does she come to the conclusion that bigotry was the main reason in this case? Or pretty much the only reason. She makes it sound like. She never acknowledges that there may have been some genuine criticism for the show in her video. But why is bigotry the main reason this time when Star Wars fans, unfortunately, you could certainly argue, why is it the main reason when they have a track record of not holding back when it comes to something they don't like about Star Wars? Again, even going so far as to say horrible things about the creator of it. Nor would rampant bigotry in the fandom explain why it doesn't always happen. I mean, just look at Rogue One, for example. Look at the main cast. Why weren't they rejected beforehand? Why is it regarded as one of the best things to come out in the Disney era of Star Wars? And what about The Mandalorian, or Andor, or many of the other Disney Star Wars projects? Why didn't they face extreme backlash beforehand when they were also very diverse in their casting? And what about past characters? How much hate do you think is sent the way of Billy D. Williams, for example? Any? And I know some will bring up John Boyega in the sequels, and it's fair to do so because, yes, he did face backlash, though at least some of it was because some fans thought all stormtroopers were still clones and were confused why one was black, which, no, is not the greatest excuse ever to kind of make an uproar. But I would say that pales in comparison to what Disney did to him when they shrank his image on the Chinese poster because they didn't want audiences over there thinking he was a main character and not going to see the film because of it. And again here, I'm not saying bigotry played zero part whatsoever in the backlash to The Acolyte. I'm not saying it's entirely fair to review bomb the show before it came out, though right or wrong, that has simply kind of become a way to have your voice heard if you're a fan, to make a point about something that you don't like. I'm also not saying that no one in the fandom did or said horrible things to her via social media. Absolutely some did, and they should be called out for it. It's reprehensible. But others who didn't do anything like that, anything remotely like that, who again had legitimate complaints about the show and didn't watch it or stopped watching it or were part of the reason why the reviews were bad and why it ultimately got canceled, they shouldn't be lumped in with them. And that's what people get upset about when these sorts of things get said, when someone like Stenberg makes it sound like, intended or not, like everyone who didn't like the show is part of some alt-right conspiracy or something, which is insane. I can guarantee you that there are people all over the political spectrum that didn't like or just didn't watch The Acolyte for one reason or another, and none of those reasons were bigotry. Though at the very end, she almost said something that I would wholeheartedly agree with when she said, "It's not lost on me how the way that these events have unfolded is also due to the hyper-divisiveness of the time that we live in that is driven, I would say at this point, by echo chambers of thought and algorithms that reinforce our biases." And I think that applies to everybody, but in a particular sect of people, it manifests in a lot of fear of what is changing, a lot of hatred for anything that is other, and I would challenge us all, challenge myself, to continue questioning what I digest and think critically about what shapes it. And again, what she said there is almost perfect. I agree with it by and large. I think people living in these massive echo chambers is a big, big problem, and they're driving us further and further apart. But she just had to kind of take a little jab there at the other side and say there is only a particular sect of people that are the real problem here. That the ones that have a fear of change or of anything other, those are the ones that are actually the issue here, and that need to realize they are in the wrong already. But the thing is, the issue is, she also has a fear and misunderstanding of the quote-unquote other side. She has her own image of what it is, and she has made it an enemy, even without fully understanding it. It is an other to her that she fears. And to a degree, all of us fear change and all of us fear other. It is very much human nature to be leery of outsiders, and I would argue most people these days have long since come to accept that, yes, there are people out there that are different from them, radically different perhaps, and they're comfortable with that and have accepted it. They have accepted others want to live different from them or have a whole different set of beliefs. They just don't want to be told their way, their beliefs are wrong and need to change to fit this other side. What she fails to understand, what many don't seem to understand these days, is that not everyone is against you just because they don't agree with everything you do or say or want to do or how you want to live. They're not trying to change you or hate you for who you are. They simply value their own way of life and don't like being told their way is wrong or need to wake up and face reality already and that the world is changing and you have to accept that. Most people just kind of go to work and want to spend some time with their friends and family. They have some fun from time to time, maybe take a vacation if they're lucky. They do normal human being things and just want to be left to do those normal human being things. Along with it, they maybe watch some Star Wars, and they want to be able to enjoy Star Wars without someone trying to make them feel bad about themselves or telling them everything your side believes is wrong. They want entertainment to be entertainment. They want to be left alone, and if they are left alone, there's a really good chance they'll leave you alone too. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Hopefully I made some sense in this one, and now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about what Amandla Stenberg just said in this latest video. What do you think about what she had to say about why The Acolyte was canceled? Or, by all means, bring up a different topic, bring up something besides The Acolyte to talk about. With the show being canceled, it's probably time to just let it go and move on for better or worse. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.